This program is not intended to diagnose, cure, or treat any disease or disorder. The listener is encouraged to seek sound medical advice from their doctor or other qualified healthcare practitioner before taking any supplements or starting a new health regimen.
Welcome back to the weekly Nutrition Heretic podcast. I'm Jim Ducharme, your co-host, and here's Adrian Hugh.
Yes, I was waiting for that. Thank you, Jim.
I know.
So excited to be here.
This has been her thing.
You gave me that awesome introduction. Thank you.
Well, at least you haven't asked me to do like, hey now.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what that is. You brought that up before, and
It's from the Gary Shandling show.
I never watched it.
Oh,
I saw one or two episodes.
It was my favorite bizarre. I mean, it was just. I think wry humor would probably be the way to describe it.
It was my favorite opening segment for a show.
Yeah, it was. It was some interesting. I think it was one of the first, forerunners of the cable TV onslaught of niche comedy.
Right.
In many ways.
Absolutely.
And speaking of niches, you were telling me before we went on air that you wanted to talk about funeral food.
Yes, funeral food. Have you ever been? Now, I don't know if this is something particular to black churches or if it's all churches, but I've been to a lot of funerals. Actually, I've been to funerals for everybody. And pretty much every funeral has some of the most horrible food you could possibly imagine.
Well,
every time I go to a funeral, all I can think is if the person go in the ground, cremated, whatever, if they weren't already dead, the food would have killed them.
But it's the only place I can get real good deviled eggs. Which is kind of ironic considering it's a funeral.
Yeah. But then I don't know who died. But seriously, it's really depressing. Every time I go to a funeral, I think, my gosh, I hope that my send-off is better than this. No offense. I know that people, they're strapped for cash and stuff like that. But some of these places are, I'm going to say a word that's going to be controversial, ghetto. The food is just, you can tell it's swimming in vegetable oil and margarine, and it's got the white flour and sugar galore. It's like that tower of cakes in front of the diner. Just some of the most horrid things I've seen at funerals, and I think our loved ones deserve a better send-off than that. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't, but I don't know what it is, but it's always disturbed me to see what ends up being served to the guests at a funeral. And then I wonder how many heart attacks will ensue after eating that funeral food.
The irony in you here sermonizing about funeral food is really striking me. I mean, it's like, it's just, is this, I thought this was a dead issue, but okay.
And it just may be.
It just may be because Jim is doing his best to kill it as fast as he can.
and Jim's thinking, but I love funeral food. Like you said, that's the only place you can get your deviled eggs.
And I think there's two criteria for, either a wake or a funeral or whatever you're doing. And one is it's easy and it's comfort food, it's
That's not comfort food, okay? I talked to you about snacking before, and I'm telling you, nasty stuff is not comforting. Stuff that is just pure nastiness is not comforting.
Okay. I think that deviled eggs and, it's...
I have no problem with deviled eggs. Oh. I have to see a deviled egg at a funeral. I see like the really nasty, the Kraft mac and cheese kind of thing and the big... It's not so much that they're white bread rolls as much as they just like sugar rolls. Like there's like a ton of sugar at these things, and a ton of again, maybe it's more of the black community, the fried chicken, and I love fried chicken, but not this stuff that just looks greasy. Like you could put it on a stack of newspaper and the whole stack would be soaked because of all the vegetable oils that have been soaked up in there.
This is a little off topic, but we have a wonderful, in the province where I live, we have a wonderful Jamaican takeout food chain.
Yeah, what do you know?
And yeah, what do I know? They make the most incredible, I think it's oxtail gravy.
Oh, oxtail soup.
No, this is gravy.
They just make gravy?
It's a gravy, and it's got like, it tastes like there's cinnamon in there and all sorts of like, it's just a totally unique taste.
I make an oxtail stew, and it usually has a lot of gravy, but I never served it just for the gravy, which I'm not opposed to that.
It's just that I was going to say their chicken is, it's quite delicious, but it's too greasy even for me.
Right.
The fried chicken they serve.
Yeah, and this is one of the funny things though. Like I said, I like a good fried chicken. There's a place in San Francisco, they fry their chicken in tallow, beef fat. It is the lightest and crispiest fried chicken in this world, and it's juicy as all get out.
So tallow is good then?
Oh yeah.
Okay, why is tallow so much better?
Why is tallow so much better? If you were watching me right now, I'm taking off my jacket because now we're getting real. Tallow is saturated, all right? And now everybody's like, saturated fat. I like to think of saturated fat as the other antioxidant. And the reason why I say that is because when it's saturated, it prevents the oil from oxidizing. The more unsaturated a fat is, the more it oxidizes at high temperatures. So the good thing about tallow is, besides the fact that it's got the perfect balance of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids, it's also saturated so it doesn't cling to the food so much. So you get, even just if we're going on what I consider a kind of mundane, boring, run-of-the-mill concept of calorie counting, if we're just even looking at calorie counting, you're absorbing a lot less of that fat into the crust of your chicken. You got to try it at least once, then you'll see what I'm talking about. And by the way, it gives you energy that you did not know you had.
Really?
Yes, and that's why back in the day, runners used to eat just like spoonfuls of lard and tallow before they would sprint.
That seems counterintuitive, to be perfectly honest with you.
It sounds that way to modern ears, but traditionally that was a big thing. I would say probably up until maybe the 70s. I knew runners and people who used to be runners, and some of them going forward into the 80s and 90s would say, wouldn't believe what they had us eating. But they were healthier back then.
Interesting. So yes, beef tallow. If it's fried in tallow, the first time I fried chicken in tallow, I was shocked because I had been using vegetable oils previously, and you would just have to keep filling that fried chicken, the frying pan with the vegetable oil, and just filling it and filling it and filling it, and you'd use a gallon just to make one chicken. And so when I used tallow, when I was done, I think I did 2 batches of chicken. And when I was done, I had just as much oil in the pan, or I should say fat in the pan, as I did when I started. And here's an easy rhyme to remember that, folks. Just if it's fried in tallow, then it's tallow.
Woohoo!
See how that worked?
Yeah, I see how that worked.
We just make it so easy.
I'm going to use this to segue into our guest for this week.
Now that Jim's killed off the conversation.
Yeah, because let's just move forward.
Yeah, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today.
I wanted to introduce our guest this week, Hilda Labrada Gore. She is the host of the Weston A Price Foundation's podcast and a fitness instructor with Body and Soul Fitness. Welcome, Hilda.
Hi, Hilda.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I want to talk to you. What do you think about funeral food?
I agree with you 110%, Adrienne. I think it is scary that is in a church. A lot of times these services are held in churches, and the food that is served in churches, maybe they're trying to get people quicker to the afterlife.
There's big money in that.
Really, it's abysmal, and I don't think we are as concerned with caring for our bodies as the Lord would have us be.
Right. And thank you, because that was actually part of what I was initially thinking, but I went off on a tangent. But yeah, when I think about our whatever faith we have, or even the lack of faith, I feel that no matter whether you're an atheist or you believe in God, there is a disconnect with our ancestry and the foods that we have decided to consume, or as I call them, the anti-foods. Because there's Christ and the Antichrist, and there's foods and the anti-foods, and most of what's served in churches often falls into that anti-food category. And my mom, when she was alive, she would fight with her people in her church because they would tout the skim milk and the egg white omelets and stuff. And my mom's like, God never created a 1% cow. Why are we drinking 1% milk? So you're absolutely right. I think that the churches could be a better vehicle for faith in what was put here for us to enjoy. If you come from the mindset that our Creator put these various foods around us for our enjoyment and for our fulfillment and for our health, that this is a very overlooked area.
I should warn you too right now that I'm going to have very little to add to this conversation, because while most people, their bodies are a temple, mine is a 7-Eleven.
Does it even go as long as 11?
Yeah, that's right. It might not even be that good.
Or are you just saying like 7 in the morning to 11 in the morning?
That might be good too. Yeah, that might be it.
That's awesome. Well, this is what I appreciate, is that you are getting real. And Adrian was saying earlier, let's get real. And it seems to me people of faith, or even like you said, of no faith, Adrian, should be able to distinguish between what is real and what is false. But the problem is, there is so much media around us, promoting whatever, a perfume, a deodorant, that if you use it, you'll get sexy. And on some level, we think, oh, I know that's not true. But we go to the store and we still end up buying that perfume or deodorant, hoping it will work, And so I think it's the same way. Like, there are these amazing real foods out there that will nourish us, but we see an advertisement for a quick and easy, convenient food, either at a fast food restaurant or that you can pop in the oven and you don't have to labor over it. And so the church, just like everybody else, has kind of bought into that. And they're also looking at price, like how can we feed all these people as inexpensively as possible? And they've kind of bought the bill of goods that they have to go on a massive scale buying food that is not great quality. But oh well, people will just eat it and, their stomachs will be filled, but it's not going to nourish.
Right. Right. How do you think we can get faithful people to start taking this more seriously? Where do you see the disconnect, and what can we do to encourage people? It's okay. God said it was okay to eat this food. He said beef was okay.
Exactly. I just think there's actually a disconnect going on. I think people even of faith will go to church, and that was Sunday morning, and then the rest of the week is my own, and I'm going to spend my life how I'm going to do it. And we kind of abuse our bodies and forget that, God sees, and we should take care of our bodies because they are a temple of the Holy Spirit. That's what the Bible says. So I feel like there's got to be more of kind of less compartmentalization and more unity in how we approach this life that God has given us.
Oh, I like that you talk about the unity, because one of my questions was, what is it that makes religious people struggle with this one side of I've got faith in God, and then they've got the other side of nurturing and nourishing the temple, which too many people think is a building, but it's actually you, the vessel. Mm-hmm. And they really don't see that connection. And even though I used my mom as an example of someone who would give her fellow worshipers a hard time, she would resort to just kind of sitting in front of the TV and not doing anything if no one else would take a walk with her. So. And I would say to her, Mom, God gave you this body, use it. You've got it, use it before you lose it. Mm-hmm. Where do we begin to bring that to people. Now, I know that you're part of a fitness group called Body and Soul. Is that part of your mission at Body and Soul? Is to marry these two?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Absolutely. Because a lot of people, as we were saying, they tend to compartmentalize. So they will, work out and then they'll come home, but they're working out to music that, is just all about, I love me. I don't need anybody else. There's a song on the radio. I love me, and so it's like you get all into that. And then you're coming home. Maybe your muscles are stronger, but your spirit is all about you. And so Body and Soul is a worldwide Christian fitness organization that is committed to strengthening people's bodies and their spirits. So when you work out in the Body and Soul program, it's so fun because the music is a message of encouragement and hope and faith and serving others. It's like a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's just amazing. I love it because I feel like I've been to church almost, while I'm working out. I'm not just thinking about how good I'm going to look, when I wear my swimsuit in the spring, although I do hope I look good in my swimsuit, but I'm really,
Let's get real.
yeah, exactly. I'm trying to get real. But I also know that my spirit needs encouragement because I get discouraged with, the day to day, some mundane things, some relational things, and I need those endorphins to kick in, but I also need my spirit to be encouraged. So every Body and Soul class actually begins with a time of prayer, a very brief devotional, just reminding us, hey, we're not here just for ourselves or for appearances. We are here to strengthen these bodies and strengthen our spirits. And then boom, we get moving. And Body and Soul, Adrienne, actually has 5 programs because people like variety nowadays and they want to get fit in their own way. So we've got a program called Boot Camp, which is really intense and fun with all the burpees and the sprints and stair, challenges and stuff. I love it so much. So there's Boot Camp. There is Power Strength, which is for the person that really just wants to tone and strengthen every little muscle on their body. And then there's Cardio Strength, which is a little more jumping around. There's Dance Blast for people who love to dance. And then there's a program called Gold, even for those people like Jim who are 7-Elevens. Even for those people, they can do within their capabilities. Gold is for people with limited mobility or, an aging population. So you can work out your upper body as you're sitting in a chair. So there's a little bit of everything. And it's just, I just love it so much. I've been doing it for like over 20 years and I feel half my age. I'm not going to say my age right now, but I feel half of it.
That's great. So would you say that this is, you talk about starting with a devotional. What's the rest of the workout like? Is that also, is there something, more from the religious aspect infused there? What about people of different faiths? Where do they fit in? I guess, would anybody feel like a fish out of water if they're not necessarily religious or they're Buddhist or something else? Does it translate?
Well, I tell you what. Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you what. You can go to a yoga class and not be a Buddhist or a big fan of Eastern spirituality. It's the same with Body and Soul. One of my favorite students is an atheist, and she'll tell you straight up, I don't believe all this stuff, but she's there week after week because we have a sense of acceptance and community. It's not just a gym class where you go in, you work out, and you don't know anybody's name. Right. We really lift each other up. So every class begins, I'm talking like a 2-minute prayer, not a long thing. And then it's the music that is actually contemporary Christian music that has this message of faith and hope. It's Toby Mac. It's, other artists, Group One Crew who kind of have a nice beat to their music and motivating message. It's really, really fun. And then at the end of class, the teacher will usually read some song lyrics and maybe a verse to go with it, and we close in prayer. But it really is a non-judgmental zone. People come, there are no mirrors. They come, like I said, not always for the spiritual component, but they come for the workout, which is tremendous. They come for the kind of friendly feel and a sense of family that develops over the years. It's a beautiful thing. And also, just to be clear, this is not like a chain, like, Gold's Gym or something. Body and Soul is led by people like you and me. So if people are people of faith and they go to a particular church and they're thinking, gosh, I want this at my church, they can have it there. Actually, that's something they can look into. They can just go to the Body and Soul .org website. Check it out. See if there's a class in Hawaii in your community. And if not, there are ways to look into becoming an instructor. But we don't have any overhead costs because we just work out in different churches and gyms. So it's a fun program. So if you're already into fitness, I would say you are all about the temple that's in great shape and you want to encourage other people to do the same, you might look into becoming a body and soul instructor.
Right. There's so many things come to mind as you speak. And one thing in particular you said early on is about nourishing this temple and taking care of your body to make it stronger. And this is something that many people don't consider when they're talking about a better diet. For example, I just reamed Jim earlier, which I do, but
it happens
because that's my job. But he will say things to me like, "Oh, but it's so hard. I know you spend so much time in the kitchen. I can't do that, and most people don't have the time." And let me tell you, if somebody wants to make a 7-layer cake, they will set aside the time. I have people all the time telling me, "Oh, I can't cook. I don't do this and that well," but they will spend 3, 4, 5, 10 hours preparing some elaborate cake with number of layers and frosting and piping stuff all over it. And I'm like, I would rather just spend 20 minutes making fish with some greens and potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And what people are overlooking is that that little amount of time. First of all, there is the fact that they're lying, because they have the time. It's just that they choose not to want to cook a real meal. And a lot of these people, if they're not cooking all that stuff, they're sitting around watching TV.
And guess what? They're watching cooking shows.
I know. Isn't that ironic?
Sometimes I yell to my husband in the other room, "Hey, come watch it live over here."
But the other thing is that when we eat better, we are more productive and we do our jobs better. Mm-hmm. So if you believe that you have your regular 9 to 5, for example, my husband hardly ever misses work. I don't think he's ever missed. Maybe twice he missed work over something, being sick, but it was more like food poisoning from eating at somebody else's house or in a restaurant. But the amount of time that people save in the long run from not having to, for example, my kids are never sick. I don't have to run them to the doctor once a month or, get them shot up with this and cough medicine and wait online at the pharmacy to pick up something. Like none of that stuff factors into my day, ever. My eldest is now 12. I think I had to get a prescription for her once. And, my other one, she's such an old soul. She's just like I could see her in a previous life as just like a big burly Russian guy. She's not burly, but she's just indestructible.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And so when we look at it that way, we are saving time. We are taking care of business the way that we should to some extent. But also if we believe, for example, if you are a faithful person and you believe that your mission in life is to spread God's word, how better can you do that than to look the part?
Yeah, you need to be strong to do that. Otherwise, you're like too tired. You're just going to lay around it thinking, I wish I could go, take my neighbor some chicken soup, but I feel sick myself, so I'm not going to get up and do it. But you hit the nail on the head, Adrienne, when you said we have the time. I think it really is a matter of priorities. And again, like you said, people of faith will carve out, say, a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night. In the same way, they really need to carve out the time to take care of these bodies. We were charged with, honoring God with our bodies. So we know it's, something we should want to do, I guess. And maybe it's hard to find out how to do it. But I do think people need to take the time to, one way or another, to move and then to nourish, because a car without gasoline isn't going to go anywhere. So I'm a big fan of movement. I've been a body and soul instructor for years. I just love it. I think it's fantastic, but I'm also a fan of putting the best fuel I can in my body so that I will be able to move.
Right. So where do you get your faith? What prompted you to be so strong in your community and to have such a deep level of faith in God? And how has that faith fueled your relationship? I guess we've sort of talked about this, but fueled your relationship with real food, with fitness, with taking care of your body.
Well, we were talking earlier about death. And I think in some ways it's like I had a near-death experience, to be honest with you. This is what happened. When I was not even born, I was in my mother's womb, she got the German measles. And when a pregnant woman is exposed to rubella, the German measles, even today, her baby is going to be born with a serious birth defect. They will be born deaf or dumb or blind. My sister said, you were born dumb. But anyway, that's a little aside. Hey, Jim, do you see what I did there?
Yeah,
I think Jim would appreciate that.
Oh, no, I'm taking notes.
No, but so thank God. I think, again, I didn't know it at the time, but my life was spared to a big degree. The only thing I was born with, the only defect I had, was a small hole in my heart. And it was repaired by open heart surgery when I was 9. So when I was a little child and the doctors at NIH would be, watching over me and seeing, has the hole gotten any bigger between these lower 2 ventricles? And a lot of time where my activity was limited. And I had to have a serious major open heart surgery when I was 9 years old. So I was afraid, and all these things pushed me to realize life is fragile. So that after they repaired my heart, I realized I want to take care of this body. I decided as a young person, I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do drugs. I wasn't even particularly religious at the time, but I thought I want to take care of this body that I have. And then I kind of had an experience that made me feel like the spiritual hole in my heart was also filled with faith. And so these two combined, the spirit feeling nourished by faith, and then my body being fixed and wanting to care for it, combined to the person that I am today. I just really decided I want to dedicate my life to helping people grow in their faith and take care of their bodies at the same time. The funny thing is, it's just been a blast the whole way through. I actually also lead music at my church. I have so much energy. I have many, many jobs, as you mentioned. I lead music at my church. I'm a podcaster. I'm doing this body and soul stuff. So it's great, but I can only do these things going back to square one because I am taking care of this body that God has given me.
Right. That's fantastic. And yes, and that's exactly where I was going with the previous comment about us being able to do our jobs better. People don't realize how much they have inside of them until they unleash their health. So it's many of us are limping along in quite a bit of a haze and have no idea what is contained within us. It's a little like the A-bomb, right? We don't know what's in this molecule until we split it open and let it thrive.
Yeah, Adrienne, have you heard of 100 Days of Real Food?
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you heard of the blogger who started a website and a blog and everything called 100 Days of Real Food?
Yes, I have heard of that one.
Because a friend of mine who's in Body and Soul decided to try that. And she's just like, oh, and this woman is like 30, like she's, just with a young mom with little kids. And she does the Body and Soul. And I'm sure she eats fine, or thought she did. But when she took on this challenge of eating real food, like what God has given us, for a time, she said, I can't believe how good I feel. And I'm bringing this up because you said we live in a haze. I mean, here's a person who's exercising, doing what she can to care for her family and herself. And she didn't realize how some of these processed foods are affecting her. And I guess one thing you were asking
on that blog, if the last time I looked at it, it seemed like there was still quite a bit of processed stuff on there, but it was just a little bit less. And it wasn't the nachos necessarily, but to me it was a lot of coupons going on. Let's just say.
Oh no! Well, I'm not here to vouch for all that, but I was just trying to communicate.
No, I totally get it. I mean, it's a huge step up for a lot of people. You're absolutely right. People don't realize what they're putting into themselves, and sometimes they just look for that They look for that organic label, for example, and think, oh, well, that's all I need. When it can go so much deeper.
But I do feel like there are blinders on our eyes. Some spiritual people will see the devil around every corner, like, oh, the devil made me cuss at my husband. No, actually, that was just you. This morning, that was not the devil. But they don't see the deceptive marketing tactics, like I was talking about earlier about the processed foods. I have a friend who used to pray over any meal. It didn't matter if it was McDonald's or whatever. And he would just pray. And he's like, if I pray, it doesn't harm me. And I thought, I think there's a fallacy in logic here somehow. There's still going to be a lot of processed gunk in there that if you really prayed, that God would open your eyes, you would see, and you wouldn't choose that meal, And I'm not trying to judge him, but I just feel like we do have blinders on, and we do need to ask God, if we're people of faith, to open our eyes to what's really the best for us.
Yes. This is perfect example of something I've been trying to teach people, because while I'm not Christian per se, I was raised in the Christian faith, but I've kind of embraced a more universal view of God. But in any case, a lot of times when people pray or they meditate, they think that they're praying for the thing. I'm going to manifest the money, or I'm going to be healthy. And it's really, show me the way. That's the prayer. The prayer is, show me the way, lead me to the steps that bring me closer to where I need to go, to where you want me to go, to what makes sense, to what will reveal the truth.
Adrienne, guess what?
What?
I feel like this just made me think this podcast episode may be an answer to someone's prayer. Like if they're listening right now, I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
If they're listening right now, this may be an eye-opening moment that they're like, oh my gosh, I never realized this.
Right. Yeah. I think with both of our podcasts, that's what we hope for, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Is that we're one piece of the puzzle, bringing people closer to where they want to be, to what they've been asking for. And that's why it's like what's the one, I wouldn't call it a parable, but the one little story about the kid who asks for, I'm going to tell it wrong, forget it.
No, I know. He asks for bread, and Jesus said you wouldn't give him a stone if he asked you for bread. Right. So we do get what we're seeking. We do, not in a weird manifesty way, but if we open our eyes, we ask and we'll receive. So Jim, how are you feeling about this? Are you receiving something right now?
Am I receiving something right now? Nothing. Not really. I'm. I pretty much live by the idea that. There was, when I grew up in Ottawa, there was a guy who had a billboard up, and my Catholic mother, who was very devout, hated it. And I loved it because what it said on the billboard was, faith without religion is what this sick world needs. And she interpreted that as being anti-religious. But what the man was really trying to say was, the politics of religion is a problem. The first thing you have to work on is your faith. Mm-hmm. And and I think it was one of the Kennedys who wrote a book not long ago where she was talking about that and saying how, religion becoming so aggressively political is undermining it.
Absolutely.
Its power and
the
influence.
Pope pretty much came out and said that a few weeks ago. He's like, we're getting caught up in the politics. Let's focus on being good people.
Yeah, look at Christ. This was a guy who was pretty non-political, other than what applied to the teachings, that he was conveying from his father. And I don't know if you, I'm certainly not educated enough in it to give an opinion on this. But the question, you could ask the question: was he a political activist at all? And I'd love to hear someone more learned than me answer that question. Not necessarily here, but, sometime.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking about what you were saying. Jesus actually was hardest on the religious leaders. So in a sense, I don't think he would have been offended by that billboard. Like, he was hardest on the people who were making life difficult by putting their laws and judgment on people instead of drawing them closer to God with love and drawing them closer to one another. So, and that's kind of what I like about you too, Adrian. In our previous conversation, you were like, it's not about being like, going back to the food and fitness thing, it's not about being like stalwart, like must not let 1 grain of non-organic food enter my mouth. It's not about that kind of rigid attitude. It's more about embracing and enjoying. And I think faith is about that too. I mean, Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and life to the full. And that's kind of what I'm looking for with the faith and the fitness and the food, like all those 3 things. Like, it's like, let's just really enjoy the gifts that are in this life.
Right. Yes, it's very true. And Jesus, of course, was murdered for being a heretic.
True.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
true.
interesting. It's interesting that Hilda brought that up about it was the political leaders, or the religious leaders that he had the most problem with, the status quo. I think one of the candidates this week in the U.S. election was trying to turn that on its head this week, and because of the whole establishment thing, anti-establishment thing, they're trying to portray themselves as, was saying the opposite. Oh no, it wasn't the religious leaders, or it was the politicians. And he was trying to make a real big reach up to, and I don't want to name the person because I might get it wrong, but this is actually someone who, should know better. And he was trying to make a really big reach up to say, that that it was the Romans, the Romans, those politicians that did him in. And I think, Hilda would agree. I know my Bible well enough to know that the people who really betrayed him were the religious leaders of the time, who viewed him as a threat. It was certainly all politics, but it was mostly within the church itself.
Yes.
Interesting. Good point.
So,
well, thank you for that insight, Jim. You can be deep when you want to be.
Yeah. At all other times, I'm wearing a sign that says "No diving this end."
Hilda, we're going to have to wrap up soon. I wanted to ask you to let people know a little bit about your podcast and how your podcast differs from our podcast.
Well,
I don't know, but your podcast is definitely a lot of fun, Adrian. It was fun when I did it. It's fun.
I'm here all week. Tries the fish.
That's right. I love it. I love it. Our podcast is all about education, I have to say, educating people, because really when they have the information, it may help influence behavioral change. We really want people to be well. It is called Wise Traditions. Our focus is on traditional cultures, food preparation and what they ate, because when we follow those examples, we are going to be the healthiest we can be. So it's wisdom from the past for optimal health today is kind of what we're shooting for. And the Weston A Price Foundation is based on some research that a dentist did in the 1930s of the healthiest people groups all around the world. They ate a variety of different things. The people in Alaska ate seal blubber, and the people in Africa were drinking goat's blood, and yet they all were well people and fertile and vibrant and robust, and he found what they had in common. So people who follow these Weston Price nourishing traditions principles are just trying to eat very simply and naturally like that too, and I found it to be really life-giving. So that's why I started the podcast with the help of the foundation, and we're just going gangbusters like you guys. We do have that in common.
Yeah, and we started, I stumbled across you quite by accident. Maybe, I think you started about 2 weeks after we did. We started just before the holidays. And I think you started the first of the year, pretty much.
Wow, that's so fun.
And I stumbled across you, and then the next thing I know, you're friending me on Google, and and then you're reaching out to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So, so I was really excited to see that you've started this. And yes, you do provide, in my opinion, you do provide more of the, I don't want to say more of the science side, but yes, here, I think what we do is we go for some of the science, but we also try to penetrate, for lack of a better word. Sorry.
Okay.
We try to look at the issues from a perspective of what happens when people take the information and they go home. And they try to integrate, like, why am I doing this again? Why does this work? Why I noticed this, but nobody else ever supported me in it. So we go after a little bit more of those questions that still linger in people's minds as to why did this work, even though everybody's telling me that it's not the right thing to do.
Well, that's fantastic. What I hope is people will learn from both of our podcasts, right? And they'll listen to ours and learn something from Joel Salatin or Sally Fallon Morell, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to listen to Adrienne's to figure out how to apply this to my life."
Right, exactly. So we're straddle. I think we complement each other well. So for fitness and faith, go to bodyandsoul.org.
That's right.
And for your podcast, people can search Wise Traditions on iTunes.
Stitcher. Yeah, iTunes or Stitcher.
Awesome. Excellent.
And if you'd like to be on our podcast, you can just drop by nutritionheretic.com and contact us. You can check out all our podcasts at nutritionheretic.com/podcast. Like us on our Facebook page. Drop us a note. You have a great idea for a show. Facebook.com, Nutrition Heretic. Twitter, we are NutriHeretic, and we'd like to hear from you. And we'd also love to have you rate or review the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, because that's a really big help to us, and we certainly appreciate it. So, ladies, Hilda, an absolute pleasure meeting you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Same to you. This was a blast.
Thank you so much, Hilda, for being on the show and for hanging in there and just giving us a totally different insight as to why we want to do this work, why we want to take care of ourselves and honor ourselves.
It's been a pleasure, Adrienne. Thank you.
Amen. That's right, Jim.
Amen.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care, you guys. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye.